Thank you very much, everybody. Well, it's so nice to be back with you finally. After about 3 weeks, I'm ready to play another virtual concert, and tonight's performance is called Texas Ragtime and Blues. I just returned from my family reunion in Abilene, Texas about a week ago, and I was kind of inspired to give this a try. There was a great deal of ragtime and blues and early jazz music written in Texas long before there was such a thing as country music as we know it today, which is probably the most popular thing now in Texas. So I thought I would play some of these pieces for you. That first tune was called That Texas Rag, written in 1914 in Dallas, Texas by a woman named, that never happens to me. I'm blanking on her name. It's Nellie something or other. Somebody look it up and help me out. I've always loved That Texas Rag. But like I mentioned, a lot of early blues music was also written in Texas. And some of the tunes I'm going to play for you were not necessarily written in Texas, but are going to be music about the Lone Star State. And that's the case with this tune. In fact, it's the very earliest blues tune ever published, at least with blues in the title. 1912, a man named Hart A. Wand wrote this tune. He lived in Oklahoma City. I think he was a pharmacist or something like that. And Johnny told me a story about this. Johnny Maddox told me this. I don't really know where he got this or what the true historical narrative is, but he said that Hart Wand had a black man that worked for him in his store who would sweep the floors every day, and he said, "I'm tired of this, I'm going back to Dallas." So that's why he wrote the Dallas Blues. That's a story that I heard about this tune. So let me play it for you now. The Dallas Blues. very much. Dallas Blues, written by Hart A1, 1912. And thank you for looking that up, Leo. The composer's name was Nell Wright Watson. That's the lady that wrote that Texas Rag. I got the first name right. Nellie. Close enough. Yes, I certainly will do a few more of the famous Texas tunes like The Eyes of Texas and The Yellow Rose of Texas, but I think I'm going to save that for the end of the program as sort of a finale, so to speak. The man who was the most prolific ragtime writer in Texas, his name was Udi L. Bowman, and he wrote a piece of music that I bet you all know, but I'm going to go through several of his other tunes first. I thought it'd be neat to play a number of his tunes back to back. I don't see why not. I'll just do them all at one time. Some of these I've never played before. This concert is also partly inspired by a really wonderful CD that Dick Zimmerman did about, probably almost 20 years ago, 18 or 20 years ago. It was called Gems of Texas Ragtime. And he recorded for the first time all 12 piano solos written by Udi Bowman. And so we're going to start out with one of his blues numbers. This was probably the most successful tune that Udi Bowman ever wrote, besides the 12th Street Rag. And this one is called Kansas City Blues. I know it was recorded by Wilbur Sweatman's orchestra and came out about 1916 or 17, something like that. If you listen closely, the first theme sounds a lot like Yellow Dog Blues, but this is the Kansas City Blues by Udi Bowman. Thank you very much. Kansas City Blues. Now, the reason that's called the Kansas City Blues is because after he sold the 12th Street Rag, almost all of Udi Bowman's music was published by the J.W. Jenkins Company in Kansas City. And we can talk about that more here in a minute. Usually after I do about 3 tunes, I make an announcement that I do accept virtual tips for these concerts. All you have to do is send in a tip on PayPal or Venmo, and the information should be in the postings on all 3 websites. Even a small amount helps with my career. I see somebody begging me to play Fort Worth Blues. I'm sorry, that's one that I did not prepare for tonight. I don't know it, but we're going to do some more of the Udi Bowman pieces. That was the Kansas City Blues. Now here's one of his rags, his other rags, and this is an original copy of it. It's not in very good condition, but I'm lucky to have it because I have never seen another original copy of this. It's called The Shamrock Rag by Udi Bowman, and it's probably named for Shamrock, Texas. So I think I went there once a number of years ago. So I'm going to try and play this for you now. From 1916, The Shamrock Rag by Udi Bowman. Probably won't hear this anywhere else on YouTube tonight. Thank you so much. Shamrock Rag. My copy of the music has a great big signature over the cover, but at least it's historic. It's dated October 1916. Oh boy, All the Rage. I've never heard of that piece. Sorry we're striking out there. Well, I'm going to do some more Udi Bowman, and the next one is very appropriate for me since I live in Durango. Here is the Colorado Blues. This is an original copy of it. The Colorado Blues by Udi Bowman, but since he was from Texas, we're going to play it anyway. 1915, this is a year earlier, back when ragtime and blues were very similar. The blues were played a little more up-tempo for dancing, and they really weren't quite slow and sad like you hear today. They just had a few more blue notes. Yes, I'm going to get to Under a Texas Moon a little later on. Let me do the Udi Bowman pieces first. Colorado Blues. Never played this one either. Let's see how it goes. Blues. Thank you, folks. I can tell this was a piece of Johnny's music because he has that horrible tape he used to put all over the antique sheet music. Well, you know what's left, everybody? The 12th Street Rag. And a lot of people get this confused with Kansas City. Originally, 12th Street Rag, Udi Bowman self-published it in Fort Worth, Texas, 1914. So it is most likely named for 12th Street and Fort Worth, Texas. However, in 1917, he sold the music to the Jenkins Company in Kansas City. The music had started to become more popular, and that's when the piece really took off. And the legend is that he sold it for only $50. And then when this became such an enormous hit, poor Udi Bowman never made any more money on it. And it's funny because the whole melody is only based on 3 notes. It's so odd that this would become an enormous hit. But I play it a little bit more like Udi Bowman did originally with the full introduction and everything. So here's the good old 12th Street Rag. Street Rag. Thank you very much. So, someone here, Ray, says, also, I don't think I can play that fast. Well, you know, the funny thing about that piece is, it's like I said, it's only based on 3 notes in the main melody, so it's not that difficult to play it fast. Now, let me see. I've already got a few requests for Texas Foxtrot. So that's what I'll play next for you. After a showpiece like that, you have to do a slower number. And this is a truly unusual rag. Its melody and its harmonies are gorgeous. And it was written by a man named David W. Guion, who lived in Ballinger, Texas, 1915. Ballinger is only about 30 miles down the road from where my grandfather Herman was born, where he grew up in Novice, Texas. So This piece is close to my heart. I don't think I realized for a long time how close Ballinger was to where he was born. David Guion really didn't write that many rags. He wrote a couple of blues tunes, a couple of pop songs, but primarily he wrote semi-classical music. He wrote pieces that were based on American folk songs, instrumental piano versions of these things, and he was the first person to ever publish a version of Home on the Range, coincidentally. And anyway, here is his most beautiful rag, the only piano instrumental rag I think that he ever wrote. It's called the Texas Foxtrot. I don't play it real fast like a foxtrot dance would typically be done, just because I think the piece is too gorgeous to play it too fast. Anyway, here it is. Thank you very much. Texas Foxtrot, probably the most beautiful instrumental piano rag ever written in the state of Texas. Texas is such a big place, you know, a lot of great music came out of that state, and I know it pretty well. Oh, Kelly, I may have to play that later. I'm so glad you reminded me. That's a terrific idea. Don't let me finish this concert without playing that piece. I'll tell everybody about it later. But in the meantime, let me see, what should I play next for you? Let's do this piece. I found an original copy of this at my friend Fred Youngkin's house. Here it is. And I fell in love with this piece. It's called Play For Me, Those Juarez Blues. And I'm including this because it was written by a guy from Texas. Juarez is in Mexico, I suppose. I actually need to take this out of here because I haven't played it in a while, and I need to look at the sheet music real quick. It says, play for me those Juarez blues, Tristezas de Juarez, featured by the Bierstedt Brothers Unexcelled Orchestra. I don't even think that's a word. At the New Sheldon Cafe in El Paso, Texas. Words by Clara Armiston Moody. Music by Bert Bierstedt and his violin. Published by the Bierstedt Brothers in Winona, Minnesota. So why in the world was this published in Minnesota if they were playing music at a hotel in El Paso, Texas? I don't understand this. So I really don't know the history of this piece, but I love the tune. From 1919, Play For Me Those Juarez Blues. Thank you very much. The Juarez Blues. I love that tune. I try to be careful with the original copy. It's a little fragile. What's a habanera bass is pretty much like a tango, And it's very common in music of the ragtime era. I'm not 100% sure if it's note for note the same as the tango rhythm, but I believe it's pretty similar. Let me see. Yeah, I love the bass in that tune. It's unusual to have the verse is a minor key, it's like a tango, and then the chorus is more like a rag than a blues. So it's really neat. Another blues tune that came out of southern Texas is a piece that was written about World War I, 1917. And I've played this for years. I have always loved it. I recorded this with Ian Whitcomb on 2 pianos, believe it or not, and it really turned out terrific. You can still get that CD on my website. It's called I Love a Piano. And the tune is called The War Bride Blues. Again, written in Texas during World War I. The War Bride Blues. War Bride Blues. Thank you very much. Yeah, a little bit of boogie woogie I just threw in there. Of course, boogie woogie is nothing but fast blues. It's the same 12-bar chord progression. Now let me see if I can get to some of the other requests here. Tom says I should play some of the Joplin rolls in one of my future concerts. I think I have played some of them in the past. It might be time to do a classic rag night again here pretty soon. A piece of music written by Scott Joplin's brother, Robert Joplin, was discovered not that long ago. I'd like to try and get a copy of it. And it'd be fun to play it on one of my virtual concerts because I'm sure no one has ever played that before. Hello to Horse Drawn Portrait here on Twitch. Thanks for joining me tonight. Okay, Leo, I think it's time that I played Under a Texas Moon. This is a popular song, not written in Texas, but it was written about the Lone Star State. In fact, it was written for an early talking picture by the same name. And the songwriter's name was Ray Perkins. He was Thomas Edison's staff piano player. And I do it very much the way they would have done in the late 1920s, both as tango and then as a foxtrot. So here's Under a Texas Moon. Thank you very much. Under a Texas Moon. Yeah, isn't that a very pretty piece? How old is the piano and what's the manufacturer? It's a 1913 Apollo player piano made by Melville Clark. I'll tell you more about the piano in a few minutes because I am going to play a player piano roll tonight. Under a Texas Moon. That was recorded by several of my favorite crooners of the 1920s, Gene Austin, and also a man named Seeger Ellis. Seeger Ellis was from Houston, Texas, and I'm going to play a piece that he wrote for you next. Seeger Ellis was primarily known as a vocalist, a singer with dance bands, but he also made, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 solo piano recordings, and the first two that he made in 1925 are totally unique. It's a neat Texas blues piano style, and one of them is called Sentimental Blues, which is neat because it goes in a minor key. I don't know why I've never learned that one, but the one I'm going to play for you is called Prairie Blues, written by the great Seeger Ellis, 1925. He was from Houston, Texas, and I do have his autograph that's very special to me. My late friend Mike Montgomery, who was a music collector from Detroit, went to Texas and met Seeger Ellis, and I have the Sentimental Blues that he autographed for Mike, and it's dated 1960-something in Houston, Texas. In any event, here's a little sample of his piano style, Seeger Ellis from 1925, the Prairie Blues. Thank you very much. Prairie Blues, the music of Seeger Ellis. There's one more ragtime era blues tune here that I haven't played for you yet. I just pulled this out at the last minute because I remembered. It was written by a composer from Texas, one of the really great ragtimers. His name was Clarence Woods. And I think he may have also spent some time in Missouri. I'd have to double check my research on that. He wrote the beautiful Slippery Elm Rag, for instance. But he was from Texas, and he wrote this neat tune called the Graveyard Blues. And it features Earl Fuller and his Novelty Orchestra, which played at Rector's, which was a cabaret in New York City in the 1910s. You can see them on the cover of the music. The Graveyard Blues, and at the top of the music it says, let's see, the famous Western jazz success. So, again, I think it must be a piece by a Texas composer. Yeah, originally copyrighted in Austin, Texas, 1916, and then published in New York in 1917. So, there you go. Here is The Graveyard Blues by Clarence Woods and John S. Caldwell. I bet Caldwell was the lyricist. It's a neat piece, The Graveyard Blues. Thank you very much. The Graveyard Blues. Clarence Woods. Yeah, you know, if you listen closely, there are some similarities in these pieces to one another. Like the Udi Bowman pieces use some of the same melodic devices, and you could even hear it there in the Graveyard Blues. It sounds like 12th Street Rag. And so there obviously was a unique music style in Texas in the ragtime years, just like any other region of the country. In those days, prior to the advent of cell phones and the internet, the music had a different sound depending on what region of the country you were in. New Orleans sounded different than Texas, which sounded different than St. Louis, which sounded different than New York. And I thought it was time I included Texas in my geographic concerts. And I'm going to play a piano roll for you now. As I mentioned, this is a 1913 Apollo player piano. I'm glad to see that I still get some new listeners. And so I want to explain this again. It's a regular 88-note player piano, except I do have a dynamic lever down here that's kind of unusual for an upright piano. And that's one of the reasons I love Apollos. They have a lot of expression. And this piano, when my parents and I bought this, I had it outfitted with a special tracker bar so it could also play 65-note rolls. And I don't think I have played many 65-note rolls on my virtual concerts yet. This might be the first time. And it's interesting to me because a lot of the early ragtime was only on 65-note rolls. And that's what I have here. Now, I opened this concert with a piece called That Texas Rag. This one is called The Texas Rag. I don't know if you'll be able to see the piano roll label, but here it is. The Texas Rag on an early Aeolian 65-note player piano roll. Yeah, I don't think you can quite read it, but in any event, it's a good thing I tested this roll ahead of time because I had to adjust the tracker bar for the 65-note rolls. It was in the wrong key. And I figured out the Texas Rag is in B flat. Thank goodness. So here's the Texas Rag, written in 1905 in Dallas, Texas, by Callis W. Jackson. I assume that was a woman. Callis Jackson. Texas Rag. It's actually kind of bluesy, like many of the other Texas pieces. Texas Rag. That's enough of that. Thank goodness it has automatic rewind. I saw some requests here just recently that I am definitely going to get to, but let me do another quick announcement that I do accept virtual tips for these concerts, and if you enjoy the music, it's very helpful to me to try and make a career out of this. I've only ever booked 1 or 2 gigs in my whole life through an agent, and so it's difficult to make a living at this. And there's both PayPal and Venmo informations in the postings and a P.O. box on my website. If you don't trust PayPal, I don't blame you. You can send checks to the P.O. box. And there will be another virtual concert just 2 weeks from tonight. I'm not 100% sure what the concert will be, but I will keep you posted and announce it on Facebook as usual. I'm going to try and start using my Instagram a little bit more for promotional stuff. So I may try and do the weekly concert announcements on there as well. A reminder, during the summer, I only do the virtual concerts every other week. So there will be another one 2 weeks from tonight. And in the meantime, you know, it might be time to move on to some Texas swing music. Now, after the ragtime and early blues music that was so popular in Texas had faded away, a young man came along unknowingly to become a legend. His name was Bob Wills, and he started his career in music in the late 20s, made his first record in 1932, and then formed the Texas Playboys about 1934, I think. And of course, his biggest hit was originally written in 1938. The words were not added until 1940 or 41. I saw a request for this, so let's go ahead and do San Antonio Rose. Now, this piece is special to me, not only because I love Bob Wills, but also because Johnny Maddox had his first hit record on this tune. I play it kind of the way Johnny did in ragtime, more of a ragtime style anyway. Of course, the fiddle players, I think Bob Wills played it in D major. Stringed instruments usually play in the sharp keys, but the piano music's written in B flat. That's easier for me. So, here is San Antonio Rose. Thank you very much. San Antonio Rose. That tune is special to me. My grandparents went on their first date to a Bob Wills dance in Abilene, Texas. So that music has always been in my blood. And as I said, Johnny also had a hit record on that song. I'm going to play some more Bob Wills for you now, a medley of several songs that were written by Bob Wills himself, starting with Sugar Moon, and then we'll do his famous Faded Love, and then we'll do a tune called A Maiden's Prayer, and finish with Cherokee Maiden. These are all Bob Wills tunes from the 40s, late 40s and early 50s, most of them. And this was the music that was most popular in Texas after the ragtime years, called Western Swing, sometimes called Texas Swing. It's not really country music. It has more of a jazz influence, which is one of the reasons that I love it. Yeah, Leo's asking me, do you know how much Bob Wills or other country musicians in the early 20th century were involved with ragtime? A lot of them were. If you listen to, like hillbilly recordings from the 20s and 30s, you'll hear fiddle players doing tunes like Black and White Rag and Dill Pickles. And I never met the late Dr. Charles Townsend, who wrote the best biography of Bob Wills, but I did talk to him on the phone several times. And Dr. Townsend wrote a huge book called San Antonio Rose. And he told me that Bob Wills, he knew Bob, and he said Bob Wills was intimately familiar with the difference between a rag and an early blues tune, or a, a fiddle hoedown, things. He knew the difference between all of those types of music. And anyway, Dr. Townsend, he was just a great guy. I had so much fun talking to him on the phone, and it was very interesting. In the meantime, here's my my other Bob Wills medley, all songs written by the great Bob Wills. much. As Bob Wills would say, aha! There's some of his tunes. I'm going to play another one for you. I usually do this one separate from the other Bob Wills tunes, and it's not really a Bob Wills tune, but he made my favorite record of this piece, and that's why I'm including it in the Texas concert. This is a song that was written by a blues performer in the early 30s. I'm blanking on the name of the guy, but the song is called Corrine Corrina. Corrine Corrina, where'd you stay last night? And I think of my grandparents from Texas and Bob Wills whenever I hear this song. It's because of Wills that this song entered the repertoire of the Texas swing musicians, the Western swing people. So here's my piano solo of Corrine Corrina. Thank you very much, Corrine Corrina. Leo, thank you. Yeah, Bo Chapman wrote Corrine Corrina, 1928. I almost said Bo Chapman, but I try to be careful on these concerts and not say the name or the date unless I'm 100% sure of it. Thanks, Daryl. Leo just asked me to play Maple Leaf Rag, and it's kind of interesting that you would ask me for that, because when I was preparing tonight's concert, I thought, who else was from Texas that could be included in tonight's performance was the one and only Scott Joplin. He was born in Texarkana, Texas, somewhere between 1867 and 1868. We believe on the Texas side. And, you said it sounded like the Maple Leaf Rag. The last piece I played, not a whole lot, not to me anyway, but I was thinking about playing a Joplin piece. So why don't all of you tell me what Scott Joplin piece I should play for you tonight? I'm going to wait just a minute to see if a request comes in here on the chat. Yes, Kelly, I'm going to get to that piece, I promise. I'm saving it for the grand finale. Let me check Facebook here. Dallas Rag, Judy, I'm afraid I don't know that. That's one of those kind of fiddle tunes, you know. Bethina, I've never played that. I don't know that by heart. Solace I could do. Bethina, I don't know. I'd have to get out the sheet music for Solace real quick, but I've got it right here. Let me see if anything else is coming up here. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to skip Entertainer and Maple Leaf Rag tonight. I have to play those 5 times a night at the Diamond Bell Saloon, so forgive me for that, folks. Let me get Solace out real quick. How's that for a quick scene change, huh? Got a couple of requests for this from Carl and Amy, so I'm going to do it for you. This is the only tango that Scott Joplin ever wrote, 1909, a truly gorgeous piece of music. Here is Joplin's Solace. Thank you so much. The beautiful Solace, a Mexican serenade by Scott Joplin, who was from good old Texas. Let's see. I realize there's a piece here on my list that I forgot to play for you when I was doing some of the earlier Texas ragtime era tunes. And this one was written by Les Copeland, who was the pianist with Lou Dockstadter's Minstrels. And Les Copeland was what you might call a folk rag composer. I love his pieces. And I was at an antique store in Ionia, Michigan, of all places, and I discovered an original hand-played player piano roll of this piece. And shortly after that, I called Trevor Tishner. I said, Trevor, do you know of any other copies of this piano roll besides the one that you have? He said no. So I have what is believed to be one of only 2 known original copies of this piano roll. And I was inspired to learn the piece. Now, Les Copeland was from somewhere in the Midwest. It was not from Texas, but the piece is called Texas Blues. Again, written by Les Copeland. He made some player piano rolls. He never made any records, although if you listen to the 2 Black Crows, the comedians from the 20s, their famous recordings for Columbia Records in the 1920s, you can hear Les Copeland playing Texas Blues underneath the comedy monologue. Lucky Roberts also accompanied them on some of their records, but the first one is Les Copeland, believe it or not. Here's Texas Blues, Ragtime Blues. Thank you very much. Texas Blues. Since I have so many listeners here tonight, 112 on YouTube, quick reminder, please hit the like button as well on my concerts. It helps with the social media algorithms. Share it on Facebook, anywhere that you want to. I would appreciate it. Did I do Blazing Saddles? No, I didn't think of that, but I certainly could. Is that movie supposed to be in Texas? I didn't know that. What the heck? I'll pull out the music. Got a request. I can do it. Ha ha ha. Another quick costume change. And here's the theme from Blazing Saddles. Thank you very much. Hey, I'm doing a Texas themed concert. Western tunes of any kind should fit in. As I have been reminded by my friend Kelly, I wrote a piece about Texas. So I'm going to play it for you now. Here from about 2007. I would have been about 15 years old when I wrote this in honor of the little town in Texas where my grandfather was born. It's called Novice, Texas, which has a population of only like 120 people. It's south of Abilene, Texas. And this is sort of like a novelty piano solo from the 20s. So it's called a Novice Novelty by me. Thank you very much. That's Novice Novelty by me. Opus number 1. Not too bad for an early effort, so I still play it. Well, I think we're drawing towards the end of the concert now. This has been a lot of fun, and I promise when I do my next concert in 2 weeks, I will play some music from other parts of the country and pay tribute to people besides Texans. But I'm saving another medley of songs here for the end of the concert, and what I decided to do is take all the non-Bob Wills Texas tunes that I know, like the pop tunes, and play those as a medley. So we'll do the Yellow Rose of Texas, which actually goes way back to the mid-1800s. And then after the Yellow Rose of Texas, I'll do a song, we'll do Deep in the Heart of Texas, and then I'll do a song that was recorded by the Light Crust Doughboys, written by Pappy O'Daniel, who was one-time governor of Texas, and it's called A Beautiful Texas. Beautiful, beautiful Texas. Beautiful, da, 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 da. We're proud of our forefathers who fought at the Alamo. And then a waltz called Waltz Across Texas. And and then the Eyes of Texas. I promised that to somebody else too. So here we go with the final tunes for tonight, starting with the famous Yellow Rose of Texas. much. The Yellow Rose of Texas, and a few others. Thank you all so much for listening tonight. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip to the Lone Star State. I always enjoy going there. I find the people nice and friendly. And most importantly, I hope you learned about some of the early ragtime tunes that came out of that state, because there was a lot of them. And there was a lot of music before country songs were invented. And again, thank you for listening, and I appreciate the virtual tips very much. I hope to see all of you on all 3 websites again 2 weeks from tonight for another virtual concert. I miss doing it, and so welcome back, everybody. See you again in 2 weeks. Good night for now.